I think it was very important over time for me to make that transition to, okay, you're no longer the person that's panicking. You're now responsible for making other people feel comfortable and assuring them that we are going to get to a good place and that we just need to stay calm and rational and solution oriented and show strength.
Welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast, a podcast about women who work in sports. I'm your host, Jahaan Blake. After 15 years of working for 3 major league teams, including the Boston Red Sox, Los Angeles Dodgers, and the Chicago Cubs, I discovered the one thing I loved the most was helping women in sports shatter glass ceilings and take their seat at the table. I loved it so much that I made a business out of it. I have the honor of coaching high-performing women in the sports and entertainment industry and supporting them as they go after exactly what they want in their career. So if you are feeling tired of waiting on the sidelines, done being overlooked for promotions, and you're ready to pull ahead of the pack and take your career to the next level, girl, I'm here for it. I also created the Game of Her Own podcast to support you as well. We are here to share the stories of incredible women who work in sports and entertainment. These leaders and trailblazers will inspire you with their success and the lessons they've learned along the way to the top. Ladies, there is nothing like women empowering women. I am so honored you're here.
If you're listening to this episode when it first airs, it's April, and that means it's Autism Awareness Month. Now, I have to admit, what I'm about to share with you wasn't planned, but I am grateful for the timing of it. I had the amazing opportunity to chat with Amy McDevitt, Senior Vice President of Marquee Sports Network. She shares with us that both of her boys, ages 2 and 5, were diagnosed with autism a year ago. During this episode, Amy opens up and shares her experience with the difficult diagnosis and how she managed it on both a personal and professional level. Listen in as Amy talks about how you can make the world a better place for people with autism, and also how to find balance during a challenging time in your personal life. We also spent some time diving in and talking about leadership. For those of you who hope to lead a team someday, or perhaps you're already leading, Amy talks about how vulnerability is the key to leading a team. She also talks about why you should always believe you're the content expert when it comes to your experience. And one of my favorites, why it's okay to raise your hand and ask questions in meetings. All right, friends, you ready? Let's do this. Amy, welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast. I am so excited to have you today.
Thanks for having me, Jahaan. I know you have a lot of people that you could be talking to, and I'm honored that you would have me as somebody that you think people want to hear from.
Ah, shucks. People can't see me, but I'm blushing. So take us back in time and tell us, I know you've been in sports, working in sports in and out, if I read that correctly, since 1999. So take us way back though, and tell us when you first fell in love with sports.
I grew up in a family that was very involved in sports. My parents kind of instilled the passion for just watching sports and being a fan in us when we were little kids. We used to, make goofy hats on Super Bowl Sunday and watch, basketball religiously. And actually I have an uncle who played in the minor leagues in baseball. Years ago, he was in the minor league system for the Cardinals, and we were living within driving distance at the time. And so we would go to all these little ballparks and watch him play. And I was 5 or 6 years old, and seeing my big uncle with all his big, strong teammates was just the coolest. I mean, they were celebrities to us when we were growing up. I never really forgot about that. And then as I got older, started playing sports myself. I dabbled in track and tennis, but soccer was really my sport throughout high school. And then I played a little bit in college, but also just felt like sports was something that I was passionate about as a player and just somebody who enjoyed teamwork. And then ultimately, when I got into college, I had this idea that I would love to just help tell the story of sports and become a sports reporter. And so I was a journalism major at Indiana University. And of course, back in these days, you would send out a VHS tape to every station in America and hope that someone would call you back. And alas, no one called. So I ended up kind of pivoting and ending up in sports in a different way. But that was sort of my journey into the business of sports that I'm lucky to be in today.
Now let's go back to what I feel is really important and talk about soccer. So I was a soccer player as well. So what position did you play?
So I was a midfielder. I would say I had more grit and more brute force than skill and finesse. I would say I was kind of a hustler out there, but I was pretty fast and I had a pretty good left cross. So I played a lot of left midfield and made just lifelong friends playing soccer. Some of those women from my high school team are still dear friends today.
Yes, yes. That's what I loved about playing sports was just like the friends that I made. And yes, I liked the competition, but at the end of the day, like, okay, let's fast forward 20, 25 years, right? Like I'm not playing anymore. But the friendships are still there.
Now I'm seeing, and I have boys, but I'm seeing them coach their daughters' soccer teams now and things like that. And it's just so cool to see it pass on to another generation.
Yes, I saw somebody I played high school with, and it was a picture of her daughter on the soccer field, like celebrating something. And I was like, wow, that just took me back to when we played. And she looks just like you in that like same sort of moment. It was kind of strange to see.
Yeah.
All right. So soccer player, talk to me. So what was your first role in sports? So I know that you were sending out those VHS tapes and hopefully everyone who's listening still knows what a VHS tape is, but that didn't pan out. So what was your next move?
So essentially, after I struggled to find an on-air position, I took actually kind of a life preparation type of role. And I was an assignment editor at the CBS station in Cincinnati. So I thought, well, if no one's going to hire me on camera, let me just get into this business and see what it's all about. And so for those who don't know what a VHS tape is, they probably also don't know what an assignment editor is. But my job right out of college was to literally sit and listen to police scanners and read newspapers and find stories that would be our headlines for the evening news every night. So I was literally listening to scanners and trying to decode what was happening on police radio. And if there was a murder or a fire or some sort of crime happening in Cincinnati, I needed to find out what exactly was going on so that we could evaluate whether or not we wanted to send a reporter or a camera crew there. And then ultimately, you were evaluated every night because at the top of the newsroom, we had monitors with CBS, NBC, ABC. And if the other networks had a story and we didn't have it, that was on me. And so it really prepared me to think on my feet. I had to do everything from calling these police precincts and begging them for detailed information about what was going on. And sometimes, obviously, this is confidential or they don't want, so they would be a little gruff with you or even hang up sometimes because they've got bigger things to do than talk to the news station about what's happening. And, just that feeling of covering a lot of ground. The other challenging part about Cincinnati is that it's a tri-state area bordered right there in Kentucky, Ohio, and Indiana. So not only did I have the local city radio and police, but also county radio across these 3 different states and in regions that frankly I wasn't that familiar with. Needless to say, I was also making about $8 an hour doing this very high stress job. And it just was not, it taught me very quickly that, while I loved sports, local news was not for me because in my head, I felt like we're just waiting for something horrible to happen today so that we can have a big story. It just felt like our lead is somebody else's loss. And so I quickly realized that I was not cut out for that. And I was so lucky, again, dating myself a little here, but I found a job as a marketing coordinator in the newspaper in the Cincinnati Enquirer. And that marketing coordinator position was with the Cincinnati Reds. And by some stroke of luck, I got myself in there for an interview. And as I said about the assignment editor position, the hiring manager was just so impressed by my ability to think on my feet. And he just assumed if I were performing in that type of role, of course, I could handle whatever comes my way working, in game day event execution and whatnot. And so I was able to make the transition to sports and stay right there in Cincinnati and work with the Reds.
At that point, did you think, okay, this is where I want to be? Like, I like working in this atmosphere. I'm going to hang up the dream of journalism and move on to this side of the business.
I think at that point, I was so young, I just really wanted to learn. And it was I think the most special thing about that part of my life, we talk about lifelong friends, the people I worked with for those 4 years with the Reds are some of my dearest friends now and will be forever. And it's been years that we've all gone on to different things. Some of them are still there, loving what they do. but you're in those game day environments, you're working, 20-hour days, 100 nights a year or whatever it is, and they become your family. And so that to me was one of the really most interesting parts. The other interesting part about my role with the Reds was I had, a very cool, unique, eccentric boss who had been with the Reds for many years and was kind of on his way to other things and, kind of winding down his career in baseball. And so he just kept giving me more to do. So when I started, I was working on ordering bobbleheads and hat night and what are we going to do for a Mother's Day giveaway? And then we were going to plan the game day presentation. And I really thought of that 9-inning presentation as a show. And how are we going to keep people entertained throughout 9 innings of baseball? And the really cool thing was in 2003, we opened Great American Ballpark. And so what I was able to learn for those 2 years leading up to that ballpark opening, I was pulled into a lot of really cool conversation and had a lot of exposure to things that I never imagined, just in terms of planning and decision making, and learned so much. I was able to really grow there pretty quickly. And then after the ballpark opened, I joke that it was sort of like postpartum depression. After the ballpark opened, we just went back to business as usual. And it was like, okay, first pitch, 7:05. And that's when I knew I was kind of ready to try and make a change and challenge myself again.
Wow. So you had someone who believed in you, and sounds like he was on his way out and was trusting you with sort of his legacy and all the work that he had done. Is that right?
Yes, 100%. He entrusted me with so much. And his name is Cal Levy, just a very awesome guy. And I think about it all the time that I would not be where I am today if he hadn't given me that chance to work in baseball and really make that pivot into this side of the business.
Did you have to ask for the stuff that he was giving you? Like, did you have to go advocate for yourself, or was it kind of coming to you?
A lot of it, I think, was coming to me because I was showing I was capable. And, I would bring him ideas and he'd say, that's a great idea. Why don't you go execute that? I guess in a way I was advocating by bringing ideas and showing initiative and showing that I was hungry for more. But I also think through hard work and just kind of by showing your stuff, people ultimately will give you that room to do more.
Were you nervous when you were bringing those ideas at such a junior level?
Yes. Even today, sometimes I find myself in meetings where I've got some burning idea in the back of my head and I think, is this the right audience for this? Or should I do some research about this before I speak up? But on the flip side of that, I tell the people on my team now, please speak up, because I've had people speak up 3 weeks later and I'm like, that would have been a great idea that we could have executed upon at the end of spring training. I wish you would have said something. Or, so if I think about it now in a leadership role, it is valuable to create an environment where people feel like they can speak up or share ideas, because I think it just makes us all better.
Well, tell everybody what you do now and who you do it for.
So right now, I'm the Senior Vice President of Marketing and Digital for Marquee Sports Network, which is the television home of the Chicago Cubs. And we just launched last February in 2020. We were on the air with Chicago Cubs spring training for about 3 weeks, and then the coronavirus pandemic hit. And so we had to really pivot, and, spring training was halted. Baseball was halted until July. And so I was so amazed by everything that our programming and production team and also our digital content teams put together to really populate the hours of programming and time that we had to fill with that spring training void, and kind of all the anxiety and waiting for baseball season to ultimately start July 24th of 2020. So that's a really long way of saying it was an interesting ride launching this new network and this new business. But, I think we ended in a very good place. It was just an interesting journey. So now today, what I do is I lead the marketing and digital teams, and that includes brand marketing. So kind of educating people on what Marquee is, what Marquee stands for, what our brand promise is, what we hope to achieve on behalf of Cubs fans. And then also affiliate marketing is a big part of my role. And some people may not know a lot about that, but a big part of how we get on the air is by having relationships with our affiliates or providers such as Fubo TV or AT&T TV or Comcast. And those are important relationships for us because ultimately they're sort of how we get to viewers' homes. And we want to make sure that we're working with them on messaging and partnerships and promotion to, kind of make people aware of how to get Marquee at their house and make sure they're not missing any Cubs games. So that's a big part of what I do. I also oversee the social content team, and they've done a tremendous job, I think, of putting out a lot of really relevant content that's engaging our audience, but also growing the audience. I mean, that was one thing that we put a lot of time and thought into when we were launching, was what is our brand voice going to be? And then, are we going to just go for millions of followers and put posts out there every minute? Or are we going to put really meaningful quality content out there and hope that people catch on and grow while engaging? So that's been exciting to see the growth there. And then the digital content team is a part of my responsibility. And that actually has been very exciting in this role, because it almost brings me back to the roots I have on the journalism side and the storytelling side, because I'm working closely with our very talented reporters like Tony Andracki, who was formerly with NBC Sports Chicago, and also Andy Martinez, who writes for our team and also works on social. They're covering the Cubs in and out daily. Taylor McGregor, Cole Wright, a lot of our talent, get to work with them and think about the stories we want to tell about the Cubs each day, and then also where that content will live is a big part of it. So it's content strategy, it's storytelling. It's often that we get to also go a little deeper in telling some stories about players' journeys and how they got to the big leagues, or someone like a Jake Arrieta coming back to the Cubs and the excitement and the emotion he feels about that. That's really exciting for me to be able to partner with our content team and bring those stories to fans. I also work closely on our app, which has been a labor of love. And, the app is a live streaming product as well as a video product. So making sure that people can see Cubs games when they're on the go is important. And then also it's another place where we can reach viewers at home with our video storytelling and our content. And so that's been another big part of every day. And then last but not least is the on-air promotion, which, believe it or not, even just populating Marquee with relevant and interesting content in our own commercial breaks. Our promo time is important to us. We take a very close look at refreshing and keeping up to date all of the content we air on our network as well, because we want to have a really good user experience, and we don't want people seeing the same promo over and over throughout a game. We want to keep it really diverse and interesting for fans, and that actually is a huge undertaking every week. It's unbelievable how much time it takes to create those new spots and all the content we have on our air, and then also just keeping it fresh all the time. And the story of the Cubs updates every minute, and so it's we're constantly needing to refresh kind of what we're putting out there.
What's great is that you shared everything about, Marquee Network and what you're doing. How could somebody find out more information? So if they wanted to dig deeper about it.
About the network itself?
Yeah, and like the work you do and everything, and
absolutely.
The work as a whole.
Yes. I mean, so our website is a number one place for people to go, which is marqueesportsnetwork.com. And that's really going to give a good depth and breadth of the content, both written and video wise, that we offer each day. Our app as well, there's a desktop version of our app, which is at watchmarquee.com. And that's a place where you can go to get kind of a vibe for the type of content and storytelling that we do. And also, if you're in the Cubs broadcast territory, you can log in with a streaming or cable provider and actually stream games from your computer, even during your workday. We won't tell anyone that you're watching, but you can keep your day. That's one of the most amazing things about being a Cubs fan, I think, is having that companionship of the Chicago Cubs, even during your workday. There's so many day games, and it's so awesome to be able to tune in and listen and keep tabs on your team kind of while you're humming along at your desk during the day.
Okay, good. I'm going to link to all those in the show notes. I want to dive into, so you have an incredible role and an incredible responsibility, and you're leading all these teams. Talk to us about the first time you actually had to lead a team and sort of what you learned then that you apply in your role now.
So when I got to ABC, I had a team of people that I worked with and then ultimately worked for me as I kind of grew in my time there. I joined as kind of a manager level marketer, and then over time, kind of gained more responsibility and built a team. And, I think it was very important over time for me to make that transition to okay, you're no longer the person that's panicking. You're now responsible for making other people feel comfortable and assuring them that we are going to get to a good place and that we just need to stay calm and rational and solution oriented and show strength for your team. Because when you get into some of these live environments or where you have high paying clients or complicated personalities that you're trying to please in real time, it does behoove you to display a certain level of confidence. I learned that over time. I've worked with a lot of celebrities and a lot of celebrity producers and people who certainly earned their street cred. And it took some time for me to really develop my confidence and walking into those rooms. And for example, a lot of what I do and did more so back then, but even today is, as we were saying earlier, pitching ideas. And sometimes when you pitch an idea, people say no. And I had to learn, okay, you're saying no, but then can we do this? Like, so don't just tell me no and the meeting's over. Okay, I hear you saying that we can't execute upon the idea I just suggested, but what can we do? Or if I made this tweak to the idea, would that work better for you? So that I'm at least like kind of leaving the room with something actionable or a small win. Maybe I didn't get the big win that I wanted when I went in the room, but at least a small win. And so in terms of like leading the team and whatnot, I think when you make that transition to being a leader, you really have to, a lot of it is leading by example and kind of building up your own presence in high pressure rooms and displaying kind of the type of behavior that you hope your team members will exemplify and kind of portray when they find themselves in similar situations, and kind of making them feel safe and confident that they can make the right decisions and that they can handle a situation on their own when you're not there.
For those who are listening who want to lead a team and have not yet and are kind of nervous about that, whatever level they are in their career, people can be assistants or coordinators and not have led a team, or it could be directors, and have not led a team yet. Like, what advice would you give them to taking that first step?
First of all, I personally think that every team is only as good as the people that are on it. And so one thing is, I think when you become a leader, don't assume that now everything is on you. You are so blessed to be able to either hire or manage people that are there that can help you. And hopefully you've got the right people in the room and on the team that can help you come up with ideas and troubleshoot when you have an issue or kind of come up with strategies. And I think what I would also encourage is, when you become a leader, admit your humanity and your vulnerability. I think that's a big one. Don't just act as if you have all the answers or you've never made a mistake. I think everybody will appreciate working for you if they feel like, oh, this person found themselves in some tough situations in the past and, they rose to the top or they overcame whatever it was they're facing. And I think it just makes you more relatable as a leader, and people are more interested in following you when you demonstrate some of those qualities. So I'd say just be open, be humble, be vulnerable, be approachable. One huge thing about the team that I lead now at Marquee is, I'm always telling them an idea can come from anywhere. And I actually rely upon them for that. And I don't want people to sit idle and wish that they had spoken up, because I know sometimes when people do that, we miss out on opportunity. And also, I think it's important to have a diverse group of people, whether that be career background or ethnicity, whether it be their religious beliefs or their sports fandom, whatever it is. I think that's another important thing when leading a team is just having a variety of opinions in the room. And hopefully they're not all opinions that look like yours too. That's been, I've just been so mind blown by some of the unique perspectives of people that I've managed throughout the years. And I've been so grateful for the value in that. It's just something that I think is so important.
Yes, I do. And I think some of us learn that the hard way. It's so comfortable to surround yourself with people on your team who think like you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's just, there's a comfortability there. And it's also, I think, the way, and I'm going to date myself, but going back 20 years, you didn't show vulnerability. You didn't show that you didn't know everything. Like you kind of felt like you had to know it all. And gosh, that's an enormous amount of pressure to put on yourself.
Something that I've admired about other leaders, I've had a lot of people I've admired greatly throughout my career, but I actually had a female leader at when I was at Turner, which was the role I was in prior to coming to Chicago to work with Marquee, she was like a CMO level executive at a little network called True TV. Of course, I say little, much bigger than Marquee, but they were really rebranding and kind of the little engine that could. And this woman, her name was Pooja Vora. She was unbelievable in that she had such a big role and responsibility, and yet she would be in meetings and just call people out and say, can you talk a little bit more about that? Or can you explain what you mean when you say X, Y, Z? Or I hear you using this word and I'm not sure, like, what exactly are you looking for us to execute upon? And I always admired that about her because it's so easy to sit in a room and just nod and think, oh yeah, I'm in on this. I know exactly what strategy you're referring to. And I know everything about the ROI and the CPM and but then you walk out of the room and you think, what am I supposed to do now? And this woman really inspired me in that she made it okay to ask questions in any meeting. Mm-hmm. And I think as a leader, it's so important to not only display that and set that example for people on your team that it's okay to ask questions or not to know something, because I think that's almost like a bigger issue in our society, is that if we could all just be open that we don't know everything or don't understand each other's viewpoints or we're not quite sure where someone's coming from, a lot of conflict and a lot of great ideas could be born from having more understanding or asking more questions.
Yes, it's that curiosity and being able and having the courage to ask the question. I often found, in my career, if I didn't ask the question, I spent more time regretting not asking the question, like days after the meeting. Like, why didn't I speak up? Why didn't I say something? And then you go down that like shame spiral of like, well, what's wrong with me? Like, why didn't I do that? Like, why didn't I speak up? So sometimes it's just worth being uncomfortable in that moment and asking the question that every single time everybody else had the similar question.
100%.
Hey, Jahaan here. I hope you're enjoying the interview. I'm sure you are thinking about your own career right now and how you can pull out in front of the pack to take your career to the next level. For 18 years, supporting women in sports has been my favorite part of my career, and I would love to support you. Whether it's joining my free Game of Her Own community or one of my one-on-one coaching programs, I am here for you. Send me a message at jblake@jahaanblake.com or DM me on Instagram @jahaanblake, and let's schedule a time to have a free session. I cannot wait to hear from you. All right, let's get back to why you're here.
And the other thing I think about just having passion for your career as you go on is, I think if you're in a role and you're not learning anymore, it might mean that it's time to make a change in your career again. And so I've always thought too, like, if I know everything and if I'm not learning anymore in my job, then perhaps it is time to challenge myself again. And I am ready for the next adventure or next stop on my journey. So, I mean, that's another thing is I think it is okay for people not to know something. It probably means that they're being inspired or they're growing and learning in their role. And if they're not, then maybe, like I said, they should start exploring something new. One thing I'll say that's been so awesome about working for Marquee Sports Network is that it's a little bit, because it's a regional sports network, we're a smaller staff. We have about 65 people. So many of us are working on so many different things. Whereas when I was at Turner or ESPN prior to that, I had kind of single functions every day. So I had a very carved out niche role, and I just performed that responsibility and managed a team that kind of served for that function every day. And in this smaller environment, I'm having the opportunity to work across many different kind of work streams. And it's so fun. I mean, it's a lot of work, and it can be, it's a lot of demand. I mean, the team is playing every day and we're turning out content, on the hour. I've found that to be exhilarating to have my hands in a lot of different projects and be consulted on a lot of different things. Whereas at some of the bigger companies, which are also amazing learning opportunities, you might only have, a small focus because they've got such big staff.
Yes. Yeah. And it's kind of just knowing what the right move or the right fit is for you based on what matters most to you for your career. And it's so unique for everybody.
That's right.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay, so we say things like vulnerability, and I was talking about shame, and just raising your hand and asking the question is sometimes super uncomfortable. And sometimes when I know for me, like I have anxiety, like I talk about it all the time. It's part of who I am. And so sometimes after you ask the question, you're like, you think about that too. Like, wow, wait, did I ask the right question? Like, should I have raised my hand? How do you deal with that? Or what advice would you give to women who are listening about how to go about just dealing with the emotions that come along with that?
I think something I actually say to a lot of people, for example, when they're pitching a job or going for an interview or they're going into a big meeting, is think about yourself as a content expert. And whether if it's an interview for a new role, for example, the content is you and you're telling your story and you are the expert on that. Or if you're going into a meeting and you are a marketer for a chewing gum brand, like you spend your whole day studying the research and the information and the consumer insights on that chewing gum. So when you go into a meeting to talk about, you do this all day. And I think sometimes we forget when we get into certain situations or our nerves get the best of us that we're actually walking this walk and we're highly informed about the topic of conversation. And we need to take stock in that and not kind of lose sight in the moment. Your heart starts to beat a little or you're nervous to bring something up. Maybe it's just taking a deep breath and remembering, I know this material and I'm seeking more information so that I can know it in a deeper way. And that's a good thing. Like I'm improving myself or I'm improving our company or I'm improving our brand proposition because I'm learning.
Yeah, I love that because I mean, if I know for me and for my career, like once I was like maintaining programs, I was kind of bored, but I really wanted to stay in the fan experience space, which meant I had to move like from team to team. So, but once I stopped learning anything new and I was like, oh, well, I guess it's time to go. Right. Now, some people are okay and they're content. And I feel like they're probably not listening to this podcast, but like, but that's so, and it's okay. Like my husband's that way. I'm content. I'm just doing my job. And this is how I like to be. And I love that's the way he is and he owns it. For me, and it sounds like for you, it's like, nope, we got to keep learning and stretching. And with that comes the curiosity, asking the questions. And then what I always like to say is being comfortable with, being uncomfortable, like just being okay with it.
100%.
Now, did I hear you say you had 2 boys?
I do. So I have 2 little boys. I have Tyler and Gavin, who are 3 and 5, and they are very active little guys. And actually in 2020, we learned that both of them were on the autism spectrum. And so talk about 2020 being a hard year. Not only were we launching a new network and going through everything that the whole world is going through, but then I'm also navigating, going back to the vulnerability piece, I knew nothing about autism or how to help my boys when we got this diagnosis. And my husband has been an amazing partner in this journey. And, when we first got this news, I was devastated because I just went right to the worst, like, oh, what's going to happen? Like, will they ever get married? Will they ever go to college? Will they, they're probably going to do all kinds of amazing things. But at that moment of diagnosis, I just felt it was like a loss a little bit, and then kind of similar to the workplace, I had to really just get myself together and figure out, nope, like we need to figure out how we're going to help these guys, figure out what kind of therapies they need and how we can balance all of that, also work and life, and just making sure they feel ultimate love. And also just thinking about like, what am I going to do for my boys and also the larger autism community? I feel like I have a small platform in the business I'm in to at least donate my time or my thoughts to helping raise funds or raise awareness or whatever. And the whole thing is very overwhelming, but I definitely feel much more confident than I did a year ago in terms of just how we're going to get through this and how we're going to help them. And it's been quite a journey. But, I was thinking about my talk with you today, and April is Autism Awareness Month. And I just really wanted to share my journey and just the diagnosis that our guys have, because I meet people throughout my travels and sometimes wonder, maybe that person could be on the spectrum also, like they have a different approach to how they greeted me, or maybe they're a little more shy, or they've got a different disposition than what I have. Or it's funny how my outlook on life has changed, because of the gift of my boys, that I just think like I need to be so much more accepting in my interaction with strangers and people that I meet, because you just never know what's going on with someone, or, where they're coming from. And I guess I hope that I'm going to be sending my boys off into an accepting world when they're grown-ups. And I hope that I can be that same kind of person today in my daily life.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Now, tell me how, that's so, you said it. I actually wrote the word down, balance, and 2 seconds later you said balance, but how did you, and it's a lot of emotions there. It seems to be the theme today, but like there's a lot of emotions wrapped up in that. And this is the most important thing. This is your family. How do you balance all of that, the diagnosis and what you're going to do, and also work, like a very, very important, and I would say challenging at times, jobs?
Well, first of all, and I had a mentor at ESPN named Trisha Betron who taught me this too, is that first you have to have a great partner. And so my husband is so involved and supportive in really managing day to day kind of where the boys are going to be and how they're getting to the therapy, or what therapy, or, the other big part of it is just we have to learn a lot about the strategies to help them ourselves. And so we try to get in there and be part of these sessions with them as much as we can, so that we're also able to reinforce a lot of the therapeutic strategy at home when we're alone with the little guys, and help them as much as we can. So having a good partner is really important. Also, I think you have to have a supportive work environment. And in a way, the one gift of the pandemic was the remote work environment. And I think everybody hopefully has learned people are getting their job done, whether they're in the office at their desk, or they're remote, or they're on the phone driving somebody to an occupational therapy appointment or whatever. And so in a way, the remote environment, I think, has made all of us a little bit more flexible, and also given us that chance to prove like, I got this, we're getting this work done. We are moving the needle day in, day out, whether we're sitting at a desk together or we're on the go in the field somewhere. So that's a big, I think, blessing or silver lining to the remote work environment. And then just having understanding leaders and employers too. The general manager at Marquee, Mike McCarthy, has been really supportive. The Cubs have been very supportive. Even just, I think when you're going through a hard time and you've got a lot of pressure, just for someone even just to ask, how are you doing, is so moving. I mean, I think so many of us are like, hey, how's everything? Okay, so are you going to send me that list of zip codes? Or are you going to, like, we don't take time. Like when I've had a lot of executives say to me, just literally, how are you doing? I'm like, wow. And I have to bite my tongue for a second, and that sometimes turn into a complete puddle when someone asks me that, because that's a loaded question for me most days. But having coworkers and leaders that ask you how you're doing is also really important. And I try really hard to do that for my team as well. Just talk about that for a second. On the flip side, it's been a tough year for everyone. And I've had a lot of team members who've either had a sick family member or some kind of personal issue, or someone in their world has lost a job or lost a life, and or they don't want to work remotely anymore because they feel lonely, or their roommates bugging them. And so I've just tried to really be there for people and understand, like, hey, everyone's going to have a day where they just can't give it their all, or they need like an adjustment or a pause, or someone to ask how they're doing. And I think that is like, that emotional intelligence is so important, especially in the world we're living in today.
Yeah. And you said something really inspiring is a better word, that you want to make it a better place for your boys. And when it comes to autism. So for those who are listening now and thinking, yes, I want to help, like, what would you say? Like, I can link to some things in the show notes, but how could others help make sure it is a better place?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that. Well, first of all, Autism Speaks is an amazing website that has been an invaluable resource for our family, just from everything from like understanding from the moment of diagnosis to insurance resources to different types of therapy explanations. But it also gives a lot of insight and information just for outside folks who are just wanting to understand more about what somebody with autism might be going through or how they experience the world in a different way. And I think another thing I'll just say very importantly is that autism is a spectrum, and certainly I'm not an expert on it. I'm learning, but no two people with autism have the same challenges or gifts. And so, for example, my older son is, I mean, you probably wouldn't even know that he was on the spectrum unless I told you. I mean, he's just, a loving, active, very curious little boy who goes to school like all the other kids and does his best every day. My younger son, similarly, is highly active, so loving, so adorable, but he's got some really significant speech delays and a lot of other just, kind of developmental challenges that we're working through right now. And they have the same, kind of label, if you will, but we're on completely different journeys with both of them. So I would just say to everybody, it kind of goes to this larger discussion in our society today about just unconscious bias and how we tend to judge people the minute we see them on the street. And I'm sure I lived in New York City for 17 years. I've had any number of odd encounters with people on the sidewalk who come up and just say something. And I guess I'd say, obviously you want to keep yourself safe, physically safe, but if somebody maybe approaches you in a different way or has a different reaction to hello, or you're interviewing somebody and they might want more specifics about when you're going to get back to them, that, a regular, more interview savvy or experienced person might ask you, don't immediately judge or label that the person is weird or odd or strange. Maybe just give that person the benefit of the doubt that they might have some different neurological composition that you don't, or that they're just coming from a different set of circumstances than you are, and not to judge them right out of the gate. I think that would be just something I hope for my boys as they get older and look for jobs and look for friends and look for companionship in the world, is that it would just be an accepting environment for them.
Yes, that's really good advice and guidance. And you're right. It speaks to the bigger issues that are going on. And really right there is, you said it, is the unconscious bias, and just taking a breath and just thinking, not everyone is like me. And some people are going to behave differently. It doesn't make them weird. It doesn't make you normal. It's just,
right.
Everyone has a story, and just take a minute to learn and understand, right?
Yes, 1,000%. I just can't say it enough. And I've been lucky enough to have some unconscious bias training over the years. But man, when you really take a minute to take stock and look inside at how you might be just sizing people up, even on the sidewalk, it's eye-opening. And it makes you think wow, I need to just be grateful for my health and the air we're breathing, and not be worried about what someone else is doing or looking like, or, whatever. We all could probably work on that a little bit.
Yes. There's, and thank you for sharing that. And there's no way for me to transition gracefully from this to my rapid fire questions that I like to do at the end.
That's all good.
So we're going to just jump right into it.
I just want to say my life is rapid fire. So I am, and by the way, that is how I live my day, is transitioning from dropping someone off at a therapy to getting on the phone with a doctor to getting on a call with a very important business, associate, to having a one-on-one with my boss. You just don't know what's going to happen next. Your brain is just constantly rapid fire.
Yes. All right. Good. That was a good transition. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. 12 questions. Answer, say the first thing that comes to your mind. You ready?
I hope so.
All right. What is your favorite sports moment?
So growing up in Minnesota, I was a huge Twins fan. And in 1987, there was this thing called the Homer Hanky, and Kirby Puckett and Kent Herbeck and all those big Minnesota Twins just absolutely rocked it. And we won the World Series that year. And it's something that as a kid, I celebrated with my family. I'll never forget it.
I love those moments. I just got the chills. Okay. What is something people always get wrong about you?
I think people often assume that I'm comfortable in my own skin, or that I'm an extrovert. And I sometimes have anxiety just like the next person.
Yes, that's my answer too. What is one food you wouldn't want to give up?
Bread. Mm-hmm. Never giving up bread. Sorry. Mm-hmm. Carbs are for me.
Are you a morning or a night person?
100% morning. And oftentimes when I have a big project, I will literally set my alarm for 5 a.m. and just get up in complete silence and rock it out.
Yes. Yep. Favorite holiday?
I am a huge Christmas maniac. In fact, it's a big debate or argument in my house. I literally will turn on Christmas music the day after Halloween, and I can't give it up on New Year's Day, and it drives my husband insane.
What job would you be absolutely horrible at doing?
That's such an interesting question. I think, okay, I know. I would be absolutely horrible at doing telemarketing sales, because I think, feel a lot of rejection when people hang up on you. And I would have a hard time not taking that personally.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one. What's your favorite app?
Oh man. I mean, I don't know why, but I'm obsessed with the weather. And that is such a surface thing, but I spend a ton of time on the weather. And part of it is, I think it helps make me feel connected to loved ones who live all over the place. And hey, what are mom and dad experiencing today? Or where was it? What's the weather in the awesome place where we went on that last vacation? And it just helps make me kind of transform myself into another location very quickly. So I'm bananas about the weather app.
Oh, no one has ever said that to me. And you know what's funny is whenever I go on vacation, like for that year, it's a weird thing I do. At the end of the year, I clear it out. But for that year, anywhere I've traveled or gone on vacation, I always save that city in my weather app. So for some reason, I kind of just glance at it, like what's going on in LA.
See? It makes you feel like you're back where you were. And it just is something, I love it. I have all our trip to Italy, I have Hawaii, I've got where all my siblings are, I've got where I went to college. It's fun to know what's going on where.
Yes, I love that. What products would you seriously stockpile if you found out they weren't going to sell it anymore?
Coffee.
Yeah, it's a good one.
If coffee were not going to be sold anymore, I would literally, I'm the kind of person with coffee where I make the pot the night before and set the timer. And I almost want to make the coffee at night because it smells so good. I'm ready to start drinking it before I go to bed.
That's fantastic. Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram?
I am addicted to Twitter, and a big part of it is, I feel very much like we are kind of in the news space at Marquee, and also really working to engage with and hear more from our fans and from Cubs fans, and constantly learning about how we can be better. And I just find we get so much input and so much valuable information about our consumers from Twitter.
Who is your biggest inspiration in life?
I guess the inspiration, I think I'm most inspired by or motivated by providing the right security in life for my sons. But I also would say that my parents are my two best friends, and really just I can see that they did everything to ensure that we as kids had what we needed to be successful adults. And I always think about, I read my son the book, The Giving Tree, and how the tree gives his branches and he gives his leaves and he gives his trunk. And I think about my parents when I read that book, because I think at the end, the giving tree is just a stump and he has nothing left. And I'm like, oh, that's my parent. It almost makes me emotional, but I'm like, that's them. Like, they've given us everything they possibly could and done it all selflessly. So they inspire me a lot.
Oh, I love that. As a child, what did you wish to become when you grew up?
I 100% wanted to be Jane Pauley, who, for those who don't know, was the host of the Today Show when I was young. And that was my dream, was to just sit on that set and, tell America to have a great day. And here's the news that you need to know.
Yes. All right. Last one. Finish this sentence. The future of women working in sports is
incredibly bright.
Yes. Fantastic. Amy, this has been incredible conversation. This was so much fun. If someone wanted to get in touch with you, how could they go about doing that?
If someone wanted to get in touch with me, I think the best way would probably be LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. I'm highly active, probably the second most favorite app is LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time on there. I try to be really responsive, a lot of networking and kind of mentoring type of inquiries and things like that. So LinkedIn would probably be the best way.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you for spending time with us today.
Thank you. Actually, I was quite nervous about it, but it was very easy, low-key, very fun to talk with you. And you make it a great conversation every time you do one of these, Jahaan.
So what did you think of this episode? Do you know another woman who works or is aspiring to work in sports? Would you do me a favor and share this with them? It would mean so much if together we could support and inspire other women on their journey. And let's stay connected. I love meeting and talking to new people. Follow me on Instagram at Jahaan Blake and join the free Game of Her Own community by visiting jahaanblake.com. I can't wait to meet you.